What is going on, bros, and welcome back to Tell Me Bro. Today is a bit of a different video because today we are not doing, reading your emails. Today we're not reading Reddit stories. Today I want to do a good old-fashioned rant, and I think I've got a good one for you guys. As you can tell by the title, this video is going to be about debt. And I don't know how old you are, you're watching this. Maybe you have some debt right now. You're considering getting in some debt. Maybe you're too young to have a credit card or any form of debt, and this will be a learning experience. Regardless, I just wanted to give my 2 cents and sort of my experience with debt and realistically my thoughts and hopefully my advice to anybody who is currently struggling with debt or thinking about debt. This is a debt video, financial video. I'm not a financial advisor. This is not financial advice. This is just my personal experience in my 2 cents. So if nothing else, take this at entertaining or comedic value. Feel free to disregard this. This is just my 2 cents. And if you disagree or have your own thoughts, feel free to leave them in the comments. That's fine. So, debt. Long story short, if you want my full debt, thoughts in like 2 seconds, this is it. Avoid debt at all costs. Realistically, that's the way life should be. And the reason why I say this is because I see a lot of people now, especially people my age, especially people in this day and age, that are very not only inclined, but like emboldened to get into debt. And realistically, there is a lot of traps and tripwires in the modern day, and they're only becoming more and more prevalent. What I mean by this, Affirm, Klarna, Afterpay, Pay in 4, like now more than ever, people are being incentivized to get into debt, but it is not to their benefit. Like right now, I see a lot of young people, and I see a lot of TikToks from young people in a bunch of debt, and it's always because, oh wow, Klarna's letting me pay in 4. Why don't I just do that? Let's just do it. It's just easier. But then they get in the habit of taking on debt. And then they buy a $100 thing, but only $25 leaves their account. So they think they got $75 to spend. In reality, even though that money's in their account now, it's already spoken for. And then their debt is more than the money they have, and then, well, they're stuck. So realistically, I just want to try to hope and maybe even save as many people as I can with this video, because it is truly heartbreaking to see how many people are in really bad debt right now and how easily people are getting into it and how unaware people are. One of the biggest excuses I see from people for getting into debt is that they just didn't know any better. And I'm gonna give you my hot take. That is not excuse. Controversial take, that is not excuse. I personally was never taught about financial literacy. I grew up single mom, swimming in debt. My dad, whenever he was around, also horrible with money, had his own debt, actually wasn't even allowed to have credit because he had gone through multiple bankruptcies and it just had such bad experiences with debt that were his responsibility, mind you. He was just completely irresponsible with debt. Long story short, I grew up in a situation that was very not ideal. And, there was a lot of struggles and turmoil with that, but debt was a big part of, growing up. I always heard about credit cards. I always heard about debt. I always heard about being late on things. And it was scary. There was times, mom came home crying because, we were going to lose the house because she lost the job or, whatever the case may be. Like there was a lot of bad situations. And because of that, I kind of learned early on that that's bad, and here's the thing, like I had the best example of, realistically, people can probably relate to that or they can't relate to that, but there's 2 ways of seeing that situation. And it kind of goes with any situation. Like you could either grow up, with a lot of debt, you could grow up with an abusive parent, you could grow up with drugs around, and you could either A, follow that course and go, oh, well, it's all I knew. I grew up, everybody's doing drugs, so obviously I got into drugs. Or you see it as the opposite. You go, wow, I grew up with a lot of drugs, I grew up with a lot of debt, I grew up with a lot of violence, and guess what? I'm not going to do that because I know that that's not what I want, and I've seen the effects of that firsthand. And realistically, there's kind of 2 outcomes from that experience. And I fortunately feel very fortunate to be able to, have come out of that with the mindset of, wow, okay, I've seen the negative effects of being in debt, and I don't want that. I don't want that stress in my life. And and that's kind of been a core kind of mental thing for me when it came to my financial journey. Now, I will say, with that being said, it's not that I never was in debt. And being a young person, like when I was younger, like when I was 18, 19, I was in debt. But they were smaller debts and debts that I thought were justified that I'll get into. But point being is, like, when I grew up, like I was exposed to basically the worst financial literacy you could experience. Like I had nobody sat me down and told me about money. Nobody told me about credit cards. I was never told not to get a credit card. Like I actually, now that I think about it, I don't think I ever had a money talk with either of my parents. Like I never had a money talk. It was just, I just witnessed what their situations were from the sidelines. And I think that kind of molded my mind to go, okay, well, let's not do that because I've seen the effects of that. So regardless, if some of you can relate to that, then you understand that, yeah, like, debt sucks. But anyways, point being is like, I personally don't believe that like, oh, well, I didn't know debt was bad, like to be an excuse to just get in horrible debt and stay there. And I think that a lot of people just kind of use that as a cope. And I don't think that's completely valid. I think that there is, real situations where people don't learn about money. But here's the thing, like, myself included, a lot of people included, like a lot of people don't have parents that sit them down and talk to them about money. But I think that there is still almost like a common sense required. Like, okay, like if I borrow money from somebody, I have to pay it back. But regardless, like I said, this video is kind of all over the place. I'm just kind of ranting, but my goal with this video is to hopefully kind of at least give my 2 cents and ideally prevent young people from getting into debt that could be avoided. Because in my personal opinion, debt is typically caused by entitlement. People think that they are entitled to something. They think that they should have something even though they don't have the means of getting it. And my 2 cents is this, and my kind of personal mindset is this: be humble. Live within your means and do not be entitled. If you go through life, and this goes beyond financials, this is just kind of in general. If you go through life thinking that you're entitled to things, you are going to be a very bitter, dislikable, and unhappy person, because things that you are not entitled to, you think you're entitled to, and because you're not getting them, you are then upset, disappointed, and feel like the world is against you, and your mindset only gets more and more pessimistic, and realistically, your world becomes closed and sad. And I would really say right now, like, if you find yourself being entitled to things, like if you think that you deserve something, or I deserve this, like, realistically, I would really start curbing that mindset now, because thinking you are entitled to things is truly, in my opinion, quite toxic. Like if you think that, oh, well, I deserve this job because I'm me, or I do this, it's like, no, dude, like life is going to happen and you're only entitled to what you are able to get. And you're going to get things based on your hard work, based on your skills, based on your attempts. So if you think that you're entitled to things and you're not willing to put in the effort, well, in my opinion, that's a lack of personal responsibility. And, you're not going to bode well. But going back to the original point of entitlement and debt, I noticed that a lot of people specifically get into one of the worst types of debt because of entitlement. And one of the worst debts that I've seen almost everybody in, and especially young people, is car debt. People get into horrendous vehicle debt because they think that they need a new car. And maybe there's 2 reasons for it. It's either entitlement or they don't know. A lot of people think that the only reliable car that exists is a brand new car. And I mean, that's debunked as soon as you look at the road, because if you go for a drive, you're going to see a lot of new cars, but also a lot of old cars. And guess what? Those old cars are driving around. And myself included, I drive old cars every day. Like my daily driver and one of the newest cars I've ever owned is a 2009. And it's great. And I because I'm so not spoiled by cars and so not entitled by cars, I am completely satisfied with a 2009 car. With over 200,000 kilometers on it. It's been reliable. It's been great. And they got it for $8,000. And guess what? It's served me well. But a lot of people believe that they are entitled to a new car. And if you watch some of like financial content on YouTube, or if you watch people on TikTok talking about their debt, they always say, well, I just wanted the newest thing. Well, I just wanted the features. It's always a want. Want. But realistically, it's like these wants are going to ruin your life, and car debt is some of the worst debt, because as soon as you buy, especially a brand new car, if you buy a brand new car, let's say it's $50,000, as soon as you leave the dealership, A, they're not going to take it back if you change your mind. And B, that car, as soon as you leave, is worth, depending on the brand, like literally a few $1,000s less as soon as you leave the lot. And a year later, if you paid $50,000, you'd be lucky if that car is worth $40,000 in most cases, assuming you're driving it and at least taking care of it decently well. So point being is like, yeah, like, and here's the thing about that. With cars specifically, you get into something called negative equity, which means that let's say you buy a car for $50,000, you get a $50,000 loan because you put nothing down, because a lot of creditors allow that. The car in 1 year is worth $40,000. You've paid off maybe $1,000 in debt, and you're lucky, and boom, there you go. Your car's worth $40,000. So if you sold your car that day, you would still have $9,000 in debt that you would have to pay for nothing, and boom, you are instantly in negative money. You're not just paying for a car anymore. You're paying for the money that you borrowed, whether the car is there or not. And this is a cyclical spiral that people get into. So, yeah. So I guess the point I'm trying to make right now is if you guys are young and you are considering getting your first car, please, please, please Do not feel like you need a new car. You don't need the newest car. You don't need the biggest features. Realistically, the only features that new cars have are a backup camera and a screen. And I swear to you, every old car, you can get a 2006 Honda Civic for $100. You can get a backup camera that you and your dad can install, or you can take to a shop, and you can literally buy a what do you call it? What do you call it? Apple CarPlay head unit for like $300 on Alibaba. You can install it yourself. There's YouTube tutorials, and boom, there you go. You have a car with modern features that didn't cost you $50,000. And my suggestion to anybody who is either looking to get a new car, consider the following. Old cars are okay. Like, they're okay. Take them to a shop. And also, if you're familiar with cars, great. You already know what to look for. And if you're not, ask people that are familiar with cars. Like, everybody has somebody in their life that is into cars or familiar with cars. But if you're looking for the easiest answer, okay, my opinion is get a Honda or Toyota, that's what everybody says, and get one that is certified, And you can find, in Canada, they're called certified. Basically, these are the cars that they come safetied, which means they're roadworthy, which means as soon as you go to register them, you get the paperwork. You don't have to do any additional work. So I've never bought a car that wasn't certified. That's how I always do it. I get my old car. I'll get a reliable brand. So in the past, I've owned a Mazda. I've owned a Honda. And now I own a Mercedes at 2009 that I bought for $8,000. And that's been extremely reliable because I did some research to see if it was going to be, because I wasn't sure. And it's been great. But I always got the car certified, either private party or from a dealership. But, they've been fine. They've been great for me. I've only ever driven old cars, and they've served me extremely well. And my first car I bought when I was 16 with money that I earned from working as a busboy at a restaurant. That was my first job. The car was $1,500. And I think they put the wrong price. And when we got there, they were trying to say that wasn't the real price. So we ended up paying $1,800. But yeah, and obviously it was a different time. That was probably 2016. But still, I think it was a 2001 Mazda Protege, 5-speed manual, a ton of kilometers, bad paint, but it was certified, and I drove it home that day, and there we go. So point being is, guys, if you are a young person right now and you are considering getting your first car, you're getting your first car soon, please understand that the best car you can get is the one that you can afford. And here's the thing. This is what I hear a lot of people say. Well, I can't afford to buy a used car. A used car is like, $4,000, $5,000. I don't have $5,000. And then they try to use that mindset to justify getting a brand new car. They're like, I can't buy this $4,000 used Honda Civic. I'm going to get a brand new one because I can do it in payments. It's like, brother, if you do not have $4,000 to buy a used car, what makes you think you can sign up for $20,000 worth of debt plus for a new car? Because you're gonna have to make those payments every month. You're gonna have to pay insurance, gas, maintenance, on top of a down payment, which the down payment on that car would likely be $4,000 if you wanted to get at least, because you have to put money down, right? Or at least you should. Some places will say you don't have to, but I would highly recommend against it. And it's ridiculous. So I just wanted to make this thing because I've seen car debt get so many people into bad situations. You can't get out of car debt. The car is always worth less right after you buy it. So as soon as you realize you made the mistake, you're kind of stuck with it. People try to use car debt to get out of car debt, and I'm not even going to go further down that rabbit hole. But understand that if you're a young person or and I guess that's the advice for young people. If you are currently in car debt, let's say you've made this mistake, you've come to the realization that you made the mistake. Okay, guess what? It's not perfect. Nobody's perfect, and I'm not shaming you. I'm not shaming anybody for being in debt. My point with this video is to try to, I guess, just bring some awareness and share my 2 cents on it. And whether it's valuable or not, I'll leave that for you to decide. But if you've already made this mistake and you have really bad car debt, okay, cool. Or even just regular car debt. Like maybe you have a car and you have some negative equity. Okay, whatever. Like my 2 cents to you, ride it out. A lot of people, they notice they made this mistake, they see the negative equity, and for some reason they think that their next best step is to get a newer car and try to roll in the negative equity. And all it does is it makes their debt pile bigger. So if you are right now underwater in a car, but you're driving it every day, the car serves you well, my advice, drive it. Don't try to get out of it. Don't try to, I'm going to get the new car. It's been 5 years. Like some people, they will make, less, like they will make below average income, but they will want a new car every 2, 3, 4, 5 years. And, my mom was one of those people. She had a below average income, but every few years she was upgrading her car. It's like, how do you feel so entitled? Like, and I didn't say this at the time I was a kid. I understand that that's just the way it was. But looking back on it, it's like, how do you feel so entitled to have the newest car when you can barely afford things. Like it's crazy what people, once again, feel entitled to. And my point with this entitlement is, if you feel entitled to something, you're gonna feel like it's justified in getting it, when in reality all you're doing is hurting yourself in the most part. So yeah, and so I don't know. That's just so realistically, car debt. If you have car debt, keep it. If you don't have car debt, avoid it at all costs. That's my 2 cents. And here's the thing. Car debt isn't the worst thing ever. Like, if you want to finance a car and you can afford the car, that's okay. And being in negative equity isn't the worst thing ever if you can afford it. Like, if you bought a car for 50 and it's worth 40, but you drive it every day, it gets your family around, and that 10K loss, you knew that was going to happen, you can afford that. The monthly payment is like 10% or less of your monthly income, and it's just, you plan for all that. That is fine. I am not, like, there's some people out there like Dave Ramsey and stuff. It's like, oh, like, avoid debt at all costs. It's like, no, like, if you are responsible with debt, if you can handle debt, if you understand how debt works, that is not a bad thing. And for example, like, why would you pay, for example, like with a car, like if you have good credit and you could get that $50,000 car at a good rate, yeah, sure. If it, you could try to arbitrage the money by investing in the market, whatever the case may be. Even in that case, for me personally, I wouldn't do that. I wouldn't get into car debt to try to arbitrage the money. I would just buy it outright. Because personally, for me, like, I'm a bit stubborn with things. I don't like to have any debt whatsoever. The only debt that I personally have right now is the mortgage on my house and the credit card balance I have right now, which I pay literally I pay my credit card balance like multiple times a month. So for me, like, I use credit cards. I think they're great. I pay for everything with a credit card, but I'm paying off my credit card like weekly. Like, every time I open up the bank app, I'll just pay it. Like, so I never hold a balance. I never get charged interest. So I use credit cards as a tool. I get paid free money to use credit cards, and I get the security of a credit card for no fee. It's great. Now, for some people, they use like, oh, I'm getting points as a justification to use the credit card, but they're not responsible with credit cards. They're already in credit card debt, and the points that they're getting are nothing because they might get $20 in points over the year, or maybe over that month, but they put, $1,000 on the card. They're already paying $500 a month in interest, and the math just doesn't math, So I guess that kind of goes back to entitlement. Don't feel entitled to things. Like, if you have $100 in your bank account and you go, well, my credit card limit's $1,000 and I really want this pair of shoes that's $150. I only have $100. I'll put it in the credit card. I'll pay it later. Boom, you've already lost. Because here's the thing that I've noticed with a lot of people that make decisions like that, which I'm not judging or I'm not saying are bad people, but that, like, it's a habit, and once you kind of get into the habit of spending money you don't have, it seems more normal, it seems more doable, and eventually the debt pile grows. And if you've seen any of these TikToks of people talking about their debt, it's almost like they don't even know how it happened. And, a lot of the times, which I see and I feel really kind of, not disgusted, but kind of shocked about, is people will talk about their debt, but they'll talk about it as if it's like somebody else's fault. Like, they'll be they're like, I cannot afford to pay my light bill. All of my money goes to bills. Or, people complain about their situation, but you look a little bit deeper and you realize it's completely self-induced, which it's hard to kind of feel bad for somebody who's in a tough spot when they put themselves there, right? I think we can all potentially agree on that. It's like, okay, like, sure, it's like, if you see somebody laying on the ground and they're hurt and they're like, oh my God, I'm so hurt. Like, feel bad for them, help them, get them. But if you see somebody on the ground who's hurt and you help them up and you're like, what happened? Like, I jumped off the roof. We're like, oh, don't do that. They're like, well, thank you for helping me up, but I'm going to go jump off the roof again. And they jump off the roof. The second time, you're not going to feel as bad. You're going to be like, okay, well, you're doing this on purpose. There's nothing I can do. I'm not going to help you. That's kind of the situation with debt. It's like, if you see somebody who's struggling in debt and having a hard time, you go, oh, you know what? Let me give you some money. Let me help you out. You're just in a hard time. But then you give them the money, they stand up, they get on their feet, and then they jump off the roof again. They get back into debt again because their habits are bad. At that point, how do you feel bad for somebody who keeps doing something to themselves? And that's one thing that I've noticed with a lot of people that actually are struggling. They're not struggling because their income is nothing, and they're not struggling because their items are too expensive, although, pay is definitely not ideal, and things are definitely getting more expensive. Like, those are real factors. But I think one of the realest factors that nobody wants to talk about is the fact that people are making poor financial decisions. They're spending money on things they don't need, spending money on things they don't want, they're spending money they don't have, and then at the end of the month, when their credit card bill is due, it's taking up half their income, and then they have no money for, anything else, and they're like, oh, wow, they're blaming their bills being too high, but they're not correlating those bills with the reality of them spending money, and this bill is, well, the charge for what they bought. They agreed to buy it. And that's kind of upsetting that people almost make a mental disconnect between the things they buy and the bills they have and the debt they have. They see the debt, they get the things they want without thinking. They just get, they live with no limits. And then they see the credit card bill and they go, oh, wow, like, I can't afford anything. This is somebody else's fault. And that's crazy. And to me, that's entitlement and that's a lack of responsibility. And I think that a lot of people in debt sort of they lack that responsibility and self-control when it comes to debt specifically. And I hope that this video and this rant can kind of serve as potentially some food for thought on potentially how to, approach debt. If you're young and, you're going to get your first credit card soon, potentially consider this. If you're somebody who's currently in credit card debt, hopefully this can resonate with you and open your mind potentially. And if you're somebody who's gone through the debt journey, feel free to comment below, I was in debt, I got out of debt, you're right, you're wrong, this is what I did. My goal is just to help, right? So realistically, it's so funny because I've seen some people justify their debt by saying, I'm not going to pay off my debt quick, I'm going to do it as slowly as possible, I'm not even going to pay off my debt, because debt is just a trap. Debt is just, I'm not going to live in that cage, that's just a trap. And it's sad. It's really sad. And people think that, doing honest work and making a living is a trap. People say, the 9 to 5, the 9 to 5 is a trap. I'm just going to, use my credit cards, declare bankruptcy. They're like, people feel like entitled for vacations. Like, it's crazy. Like, for me, I make good money now, and I did it in my business before, but I've never taken a vacation. And there's people that, work part-time at McDonald's that feel entitled to take a vacation twice a year, and they do it all on debt, and they spend money they don't have. And I'm not saying don't take a vacation, but I'm saying that if you're going to do something, you should be able to afford it. And if you can't afford it, well, plan strategically with the money you do have to make it affordable. And, realistically, even if you have a low income, you can do fun things, but it requires sacrifice. Like, maybe if traveling once a year is a non-negotiable for you, okay, first of all, travel on the cheap. Second of all, okay, maybe you take public transport in your day-to-day life because that works for you and that's cheaper than having a car, and that allows you to go on vacation, like whatever the case may be. And now I'm sure there's some people that are going to say, well, it shouldn't have to be that way. Well, guess what? That's the way it is. Like, the mindset of it shouldn't be that way is not productive, and it's also not realistic. And it only causes people to live in a fantasy that only gets them in debt. And then those people, because they live in that fantasy, they feel like they're not responsible for that debt, and it doesn't get addressed, and they get deeper down the hole. So if you think that working hard to pay off your debt, which is, money that you owe because you bought things that you couldn't afford, is a trap. If you think that working hard is a trap, then understand that spending money you don't have and getting into that debt is, in my opinion, the real trap. Because once you have debt, they're going to come after you. There's so many bad things that come out of being, disgustingly in debt. So hopefully this video is just, I don't know if this even makes sense. I'm not even gonna edit this. I'm just gonna post this, but yeah, guys, I don't know. I just wanted to make this rant because I feel very fortunate that I was able to have a brief, experience with debt. And I guess I'll go into that quickly. So when I was young, I had my first credit card. It had $1,000 limit. I went on a trip with some friends to Toronto. And it was fun, but I was spending money I didn't have. I had $1,000 credit card limit. I had $500 in my account. I was like, okay, well, I'm just gonna use my credit card for the trip to get the points. I spent, $800 on the trip. I get home, bills came out. I had $100 in my checking account. Boom, I was in debt. What did I do? Immediately stopped spending on the credit card and immediately started putting all the extra money I had for my part-time job onto the credit card to pay it off ASAP. And it worked out, and I quickly learned my lesson there. The only other debt that I was involved in was school debt. I went to school for half a semester. I took out a loan to go to school because obviously I had nobody to pay for my school. And I was in debt because of the schooling. And it was not ideal, but same thing. You pay it, and luckily with school debt, the interest rate is lower and there's a little bit more grace. But when you drop out, it's a little bit more aggressive, which is something that I did. So I had to pay that off quickly. And fortunately, I was able to pay that off quickly. But it requires focus and work, and you have to, be responsible for your debt. So hopefully this resonates. If you have debt, you're not a bad person. I'm not judging you. It happens. And I guess one thing I want to say really quickly is that, like I mentioned earlier, this world is kind of set up right now for you to get into debt. Everybody's sending, as soon as you turn 18, credit card companies are sending you credit cards. As soon as you buy something online, you're getting offered to pay in full. Here's the thing. The world is trying to force you into debt. However, that, in my opinion, that is the trap. And it's funny because people say it's just so capitalistic for me to pay off the debt that I owe, and for me to slave away and work just to pay off my debt. I'm not going to work just to pay off my debt. But then these people, they call that, dystopian capitalist or whatever. But then they, when it comes time to buy something, they go, oh, pay in full. I'm going to do that. It's like you are literally falling for that dystopian capitalistic trap of get debt for everything so we can control you. I don't know. It's funny. And like I said, I'm not judging those people, but I think it's just short-sighted. And I think a lot of it stems from a place of lack of responsibility and a sense of entitlement. Like, oh yeah, I am entitled to this. I deserve this. And in my opinion, that's just not the case. So if I'm trying to think of any other debts, like realistically, there are some debts that you should not should get into, but are acceptable. Like realistically, in my opinion, if you're going to use a credit card, that's okay. But if you're not paying, if you already are in a bad habit with money, like you already have like if you don't typically hold money in a savings account or in a checking account, don't get a credit card. Because if you are the type of person who spends every dollar they has, if you get a credit card, you're going to spend every dollar you don't have, because credit cards allow you to spend money you don't have, right? So if you already are somebody who has $0 in your bank account at all times, you spend every dollar you have, either change the habit and then get a credit card, or don't get a credit card at all. If you're somebody who's going to school, okay, if you want to go to school, if you can see an ROI with your degree, and you have a plan to pay off your debt, like potentially you're going to work part-time to pay off school, I'm not necessarily against going into debt for school, but understand that debt is real money. And if you're going to spend $20,000, $40,000, $60,000 on school, understand, like, hey, is this worth 20, 40, 60 grand? Is this worth it? Will I be able to pay this off? Because there's another thing where there's a lot of people, they go to school, they sign on the dotted line, they take out the debt, and they get out of school and they complain they're in student loans. It's like, well, you signed up for these student loans, right? So my point is, if you're going to sign up for student loans, which I don't think is a bad thing, I think it's, I think getting educated is a good thing. But if you're going to get educated, which I advise, make sure that you're doing it in a way that makes sense, and make sure that you understand the contract you're signing. Like if you're going to borrow money, understand how much and what for, and what that money is going to get you in return. Understand the value proposition there. And yeah, I guess the only other debt that really we could talk about, credit cards, avoid them. Car debt, truly avoid car debt if you really can. If you can afford it, like if you're making $10,000 a month and you can afford to put $20,000 down on a $50,000 car, and you can make the monthly payments easily, it's less than 10% of your income, and you could buy it cash, but you just don't want to tie up all that money, I support that. I get that. And I guess the last thing is houses. People call mortgages good debt. I think good debt is kind of an oxymoron, but in today's day and age, buying a house cash is, in my opinion, just unrealistic. So understand that, yes, houses are good, but even when it comes to houses, live within your means. Do not, the biggest thing you can be that's scary is house poor. And earlier how I talked about negative equity with cars, that can happen with houses too. Just imagine if you buy a house for, sorry, my throat's dry because I've just been talking nonstop for 30 minutes. Imagine you buy a house for 200 grand, and then the following year, because of the market shifts, it's worth 150,000. That is scary. People typically buy a house because they see it as an investment, or they see it as, a safe debt or a good debt. But if you buy a house for 200,000, maybe you bought the wrong market, whatever, and then the following year, this happened during COVID. A lot of the times people bought houses overvalued and now they're underwater. It's like, if you bought a house for 200, now it's worth 150, you owe $50,000 on a mortgage for nothing. And if you sold the house, you would still have to pay 50 grand out of pocket to even sell it. So you are literally stuck. So understand that when you're buying a house, buy a house that you can truly afford, meaning the mortgage payment is low. Don't buy your dream home, buy the home that you can afford. Maybe buy a house that is older that you can work on and add value to. So what you can do is actually the opposite. Buy a house for 150, and over the time, you and your partner can do things to the house to make it worth 200 in 5 years or whatever, with appreciation and with value added. Those are kind of good hygiene habits. So this is, I guess, I really didn't expect this video to be 30 minutes, but this is my, 30-minute debt rant. If you're in debt, understand that it is your responsibility to pay it off. And if you are unhappy with the debt you're in, pay it off and do not get back into debt. It is a habitual behavior. It's almost like a drug. Get rid of your credit cards today. If you are young and you're not in debt yet, but the world of debt is coming, take it from me. Avoid it at all costs. If you are responsible with money, if you as a child have a job and have been responsible with money, potentially get a credit card, start building your credit. However, if you've never been good with money, avoid credit cards at all costs. Become responsible first. Get a job, practice saving, put 10, 20, 30% in the savings account, keep the rest in your checking for fun or whatever. And when it comes to housing, buy a house you can afford. When it comes to cars, ideally buy a car cash. If you can't buy a car cash, in my opinion, you can't finance a car. And if you can finance a car and you can buy it cash, buy it cash. And you're saying, well, how am I supposed to get around? Dude, figure it out. Bike, public transit. If you need a car desperately, borrow a car, carpool. There are so many ways to get around to getting in horrible car debt that is only going to make your situation worse. So I don't know how this video is going to do. I know that this isn't a finance channel, but I talk about advice here. So hopefully this rant was entertaining. I really didn't mean to rant for 30 minutes. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm just trying to help the bros out. So hopefully you bros can get out of debt, stay away from debt, never get into debt. And debt's not fun, but it is a part of life. So if you can't avoid it, do your best. But that's it for me. Thank you, bros, so much for watching. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.